All right, welcome. It's February 27th, 2023, and this is just going to be a brief recap of today and what happened, okay? So, this is the RTH. What happened today? It's kind of an interesting day. We had a good gap up. So, if we look at pre-market, we had the break here. It failed to go lower at the Sunday night open, and then we came back, cleared this high, and basically made a higher high than here. So buyers were interested, and then we had a light sell till about 2 in the morning, just before London opened at 3, and continuously higher highs, right? So we have the trend line here, basically in line, right? And held that, broke the downtrend in pre-market. London brought some volume in, and then it went into consolidation mode in the morning there. And then we had a little bit of a breakout right into the open, right? So easy play over 1280, even 1275 in the open, or dips at 8 o'clock near the 6 a.m. lows. So low risk, you're in an uptrend going through consolidation. Shorts are going to try and roll it over here, right? It makes sense. This was the low before we had the breakdown for some data on Friday. And so shorts are going to try and roll it over and bring it back down to 11,925. Bull steps up, breaks this range, and a nice, basically 70-point pop into the open, which is pretty good, right? So that's kind of what caused that. Let's look at the daily quick. I should probably start with the dailies. But again, same kind of thing, right? We have Friday's lows. The opening candle holds just right near the body, right? So whoever was getting long in here, they're risking basically versus a break of this low, like the 11,997, and pushes up higher, right? It doesn't have enough oomph. It kind of runs into this resistance here and fills that gap, right? So that's where, if we look to the RTH, we have this huge gap here from the Friday data. Basically fills it, right? And then we get some selling. What I found was interesting is the hold here at 1280, 1265, about a 15-point range where buyers were interested. And we didn't actually come down and fill the gap. Whereas S actually came a lot closer. S actually did fill the gap. So S is a little bit weaker compared to NQ. So kind of interesting. And then it was met with consolidation through the rest of the day, right? Downtrend line, basically got the rejection, 1245. That was also a level on Friday. I don't know if I have the level still up. No, I don't. But that was a level on Friday, so good range. Almost ticked the 12,195, missed it by a few points. I should have actually had it at probably 185 because of that gap fill. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. Let's see how the morning progressed here. So at the open, we had a little bit of profit taking. Notice all the slightly lower highs. Buyers just couldn't gain that momentum. They weren't really willing to commit up there. They're looking to buy dips. So anywhere near the lows, kind of bought up. And then basically it fails to roll over here, right? So, and then once we finally do get the higher high and then the higher low, it kind of scares the bears and they start to cover, right? So this is, here, you can kind of see. So this was the most recent high, still making lows, and then we get the higher high here. Higher high. And and higher low, okay? And then that kind of causes that break and that little bit of a squeeze kind of scenario here into this. And then this is the confirmation over this 135 break. So you can play this a couple different ways. The way I like to play it is I like to see, you know, in here, you can kind of get trapped the same way, right? Like, because this did the same thing, higher high, and then you'd be trying to buy here about 120, and this one didn't work, right? So you probably would have got stopped, depending on what your risk tolerance was. If you're risking about 15 points, you probably would have been okay. But ideally, you want to see the low pop and hold immediately. So this is kind of what this one did, right? So you would have had one stop, or yeah, probably one stop, because I usually only risk 12 to 15 max. And then here it popped, dropped, and then it's holding these lows, right? And then the reaction is basically immediately. So one contract there, and then you could add on the break if you're targeting somewhere up here. And that's what happened, right? So then we tested that downtrend line from here. I think it was it this? I might have to zoom out quick again to kind of put it back. But basically, all right, let's go like this. Maybe there is no downtrend line that actually coincides with that. Not that I see. It coincides with this one. Depending how you draw it, I'm sure there's something that kind of gives a little bit of an edge there. Yeah. So from that high to there, kind of get a little bit of reaction. But basically what's mostly important is it closed the gap and then it sold. Okay. And then after that, came down, made a low, came down, lower high, and then this kind of confirms it, right? Lower low, lower high. So if you're playing these, you can, the safest way is to always play, you know, you want to say you usually risk 12 points, right? So you can kind of set it, this template's set for 40, you know, you can try and fill something like that. Or even, you can even risk a little bit less. If you want to risk first high a day, something like that, but your chances of getting filled are a little bit less, unless you filled right here where 1018 still possible. We can pop 195 or at the very worst high a day. So this is actually in here would probably be the lowest risk. And then again, you can add on the break of this, right? So buyers are basically, they're willing, they see the lower low. Buyers, if they want to step up, they got to step up right here at about 163, you know, yeah, 163, 165, 160, and then the reaction needs to be immediate, right? So it's kind of what happened here. You got this sell, it came down into a little bit of support there and got the pop. It made a higher high than this. Ideally, this you'd want to see hold and then up, but because it didn't do that, came down, sold, and then the break of this is the entry or the retest. It gives you a little retest here. But what I find is you don't always get that retest. So if you're going to short, this is 158 and that's 176. So that's quite a bit of risk. In these scenarios, I usually use fixed risk, right? So like if I was going short position, template, 40 points, my entry would be on the break, and then I would just risk a fixed amount, right? So you can get stopped out on that, but ideally, if price is weak and sellers are stepping in, you're not going to get the pop up near this. It's not likely. If it does pop up, it's probably wasn't going to work anyways, right? Like it's not too often. Like buyers from in here and pre-market, they see these lows, they see the potential rollover, and they're anticipating a bull flag, right? Like, so they're anticipating kind of like a break like this, right? So they don't want to see the break of the most recent low, right? And the more lows you make, the the more likely the breakdown occurs, right? And then again, same thing. Get those breaks. It's coming into support here. This was a low, but now you kind of have a little bit of fear into you, and this candle is ugly. It's 20, 30 points in one 1 minute candle. So it's showing sellers are active. And you're probably going to need some consolidation to try long. And that's what happened, right? We kind of went into consolidation mode. We got a nice initial reaction off the 1280. It moved about 40 points before going back into consolidation mode. And if we were going to keep selling, right here would have been the break. Okay? It wouldn't have reclaimed this level. Or at the very least, it would have went up to about here. People that are going to risk first here, and then it would have sold down and hopefully close the gap if you're bearish, right? But once you start seeing these reclaims, especially the reclaim in the test and then the higher high, it's unlikely. So then now buyers are kind of in control, and it's just accumulation in here until we finally basically exhaust the shorts, right? So you got a little downtrend line here, kind of right like that. So again, same thing. Lower high, comes down, lower low, lower high. And if you're short biased, it should sell. Long biased is low risk, right? You're longing basically on the reclaim because it shouldn't happen, right? It should show weakness. Gets the breakout. Shorts are kind of scared. Stops are above here, here, and here, most likely. So pop over this one, send some up. These guys are still okay. Comes down, holds. Bear sees that. They see the higher low. They see the break of this downtrend consolidation. And then they cover, and that gives us that nice quick move. Well, not super quick. It was kind of over lunch, but gave us 40-ish points, 30 points before finally selling again. It was kind of tough price action there before we kind of got to 45, right? So again, if you look at this, higher low, and then it trends up, and then it breaks down, breaks this range, right? There's a little range there, breaks it, and then people are basically, they see this 80 hold, they see this as a higher low on, say, a 5-minute time frame, and they're kind of going like this. Template, 40 points. They're probably risking something like that, looking for, to come back and test kind of in the opening range here. Or like I said, there's that downtrend line that matches up there. And then that's where people got short. And again, it kind of fell apart after there, right? So we broke this low, but the selling wasn't really exaggerated. It was very slow and choppy. So I'm not sure what to make of that right now. I'm kind of interested in going into tomorrow, what we'll do. Because like I say, S filled that gap for the most part, and NQ did not. So are we going to see NQ be a little bit weaker tomorrow? We'll have to wait and find out. But basically the levels I'm kind of interested in, 1230 I don't think will be too relevant tomorrow. I think probably 1200 will be much more relevant. And then maybe these recent lows about 1265, 1260 will be a good one. I think 195 will still be relevant. Maybe move it to 185 and then maybe 135, 145, so somewhere in there. Because 145 is obviously still important. But it's interesting because it was like, I guess it would have offered a play in the morning too. So I'm still kind of developing process on how to draw these levels, because sometimes they seem relevant later on in the day, but at the open with the volume and whatnot, they are not as relevant. But I guess the 145 would have been still relevant to know to be short biased. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of RTH, 5 minute, still a little gap there. 195, 11,925 remains important to hold. How did the week open up here? Let's look at the weekly. So chances of moving higher, I could see 12,350 to come, but the monthly does look bearish overall, right? And we only have a couple days left before we get the next open candle. So basically, if we get the break of this 11,925, you know, going by magnitude, we should come back down to this 10,772. But we'll have to see, right? It does seem fairly bearish, you know, getting that big pop into this resistance and then selling. Weekly also looking ugly. Lots of like very wicky over the last 3 weeks. Lots of sellers present in this area. Bull really needs to hold in this area. If this low breaks at 11,875, about, you know, it could easily come down to 11,600, 11,200, pretty easily. We'll see. Very interesting stuff. Anything else that I see? I see this gap up here. So if we do get some momentum and we break kind of this downtrend here, which maybe it'll happen in Globex, you could get that grind up. It's been tested 1, 2, 3, almost 4 times. It basically meets up with this. So I'm kind of interested to see. I'd like to see some rally. I'm not sure what there is for data this week. I haven't really looked. I just looked day to day. But that could cause that some movement. This gap is filled, so maybe it wants to fill this one before we finally grind higher. And we'll have to see about that. So, okay, well, yeah, I don't think anyone's watching this stuff, but if for some reason someone is watching it and you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments and I will try to address them in a video. I'm going to try and do this daily, like I said, mostly for myself, but if anyone else can gain any insights from it, that would be good. Okay, thanks. Have a good one.